Welcome back once again. So this video, what I'm going to emphasize in this video is how to get the absolute best stitch out you can possibly get when doing very small satin stitches. And in particular, I'm specifically meaning very small satin stitch letters. And digitizing is only the first part. I'm going to go over some stabilizers. I've got some sticky spray, and we're going to talk about sticky spray gumming up needles, which we've never had happen. I'm going to tell you how Heather does it. I do the digitizing, she does the stitching, so together we work together to get some very good small satin stitch lettering to work. My computer, I completely crashed my hard drive. It's my doing, not Linux's fault. It did what I told it to do, and I shouldn't have told it to do what I did. So, I'm kind of back to where I was. I'm going to see if I can come up with some pictures of some of the small satin stitch lettering that we've done, and I'll show you if I find any. I'll show you that at the end of the video. The main thing is digitizing. The other main thing is stabilizer. So we'll start with digitizing. Anytime you're doing very small lettering, you don't want, this is called serif, I do believe. This kind of lettering is called serif. And it's got the little extra feet, and it's got the little hang downs on the E. It's got the little flags on both sides of the M and the feet and the feet. Yeah, you don't want any of that. You want to have simple letters. And you're probably going to have somebody ask you to do it, but this is a kind of a generalization for this video. So instead of doing serif, we're going to do sans serif, which, if I'm not mistaken, means not serif. And your letters should look more like this. We're going to make this small right now. We are at 2.5 millimeters wide on that, what will end up being the satin column on these letters. I'm not talking about 2 millimeter wide satin stitches. If you have a 2.5, 3 millimeter wide satin column and your fabric moves around 0.1, 0.2 millimeters, you're not going to see that. But if you have a 0.8 millimeter wide column and your piece of fabric moves around 0.1, 0.2 millimeters, it's going to be very obvious. And I'm specifying letters because everybody knows what these letters look like and are supposed to look like. If you're doing some kind of abstract art, nobody knows what it's supposed to look like, so the judgmental eyes aren't quite as strong. I'm going to make this smaller by quite a bit. Okay, let's see where we're at now. Now on the E, perfect. We are 3/4 of a millimeter wide on that fattest part of the E. On the smallest part, we are 0.4. I do want it to be just a little bigger than that. You really don't want to go that small, so we're going to go just a little bigger. And it could be that I just needed to make it taller. I think that might be the case. Now we're looking at 0.87 mil on that column and 0.79 on that column. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You'll hear on a regular basis, you'll hear, don't make a satin column less than 1.5 millimeters wide. You can. It's not completely recommended, but you can. So, I'm going to show you A, E, M, and X, because those are the hardest ones to digitize, especially when you're talking small. Because you don't want, okay, if you're making a letter C, for example, on a letter C, you have a beginning tie off, and you have the end of the letter C tie off. That's perfect. Every single letter that you do, you want a beginning of the letter tie off and the end of the letter tie off. You don't want tie offs and trims in between. So on this letter A, the letter E, the letter M, the letter X, we're going to have one tie off at the beginning of the letter. We're going to have one tie off at the end of the letter. We're not going to do any trims in between, because trims and tie offs create extra stitching. When you're dealing with stitches that are already this close together, you don't want those extra stitches. And they're extra stitches that are in one spot. You'll have 4 or 5 needle stitches in one spot. We don't want that. So we're going to minimize that. Some of this is how you design it. For example, the A, on this letter A, I am going to do this crossbar first. We're going to go to there. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to duplicate it, hit my arrow, come down. I'm going to spread it out a little bit. Grab both of them, Control K, extensions, Inkstitch, params. Of course, I'm doing this assuming that you have some familiarity with Inkstitch. If you don't, I do have beginner series available in my playlist. So I'm going to change that to satin, custom satin stitch, Inkstitch, params. I don't know what I just did. Okay, it did take it. So on this allow lock stitches, this is one of the key moments. Allow lock stitches. I'm going to do before, because I want the beginning of this item to have lock stitches. I don't want the end to have a lock stitch. You saw how it just stopped. Now I'm going to hit apply and quit. Nope. And now I'm going to bring it back up because I want to see where that ended. So you see it tie off, and then it's going to stitch, and then it gets to here and it just stops. So right now we are getting done at that topmost point. So I'm going to go to that topmost point, and I'm going to start my running stitch from there. And I'm going to assume that my next one will start here. Now we're going to go into fill and stroke. We're going to select a dotted line, which tells Inkstitch I want this to be a running stitch. Now I'm going to go to extensions, Inkstitch, params on that running stitch. And I want allow lock stitches on neither. It's going to go straight from the satin column, straight into this running stitch, straight into the next column and the next column. And at the end of the letter A, we're going to tie off again. So in my experience, if I start on the right side, it's going to start the satin stitch on the left side. Let's see how that works out. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go a little to the right of center at the top. I'm going to go from here. I'm going to go straight up. I'm going to grab the pencil. I'm going to make a couple of straight lines with holding control to make sure that they are straight lines. I'm going to grab everything that I just did, is from there to there, Control K for combine, Inkstitch, params, and we're going to go custom satin column. It did indeed start on the left, just as I thought. If you start drawing on the right, the satin stitch will start on the left. I figured that out by accident. I'm going to do lock stitches on neither, because I don't want that column to have lock stitches. I'm going to take note of where it ends. It ends on the right hand side. And on the right hand side, we're going to go ahead and start the next one. We want to start over here, so it starts on the left side. We're going to go all the way down. And I could have just duplicated the other column. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that other column and show you how to adjust as needed. So that column, Control D to duplicate, hit that button right there to flip. We're going to grab it, we're going to drag it over. I'm going to do it again. Hold Control button and drag it over absolutely straight. Now, the reason I did this is because, yes, we could make another one just like we did from the top down. This is duplicate, so it's stitching from the bottom up. We want it to stitch from the top down. We have the whole thing, the whole column selected. I'm going to go to Path and Reverse. Now it should be stitching from the top down. Absolutely perfect. And on that one, we're going to select After. So now we have a lock stitch at the beginning of the A and a lock stitch at the end of A, and no lock stitches or trims in between. Key, that is key. Okay, we're kind of going to do the same thing over here. And something I like to do is after I get the letter done, I'm going to go ahead and set that letter into a group so that letter A is its own group. So now I'm going to do the E. We are going to stitch over to here, hit enter, duplicate, grab it, drag it down straight, hit the both of them, Control K, extensions Inkstitch, params. So in this case, I need to do before. So in this case, I need that satin stitch to finalize on top, which it's pretty close. It does some kind of little weird half stitch. That's fine. So the stitch is ending at the top. That's what we need. Now I'm going to create another satin stitch from here down to about the very top of that next column over. I'm going to draw the line on the left first so that it starts stitching on the right first. Let's see how that works. I could have duplicated, but I didn't. And we're going to combine. Okay. Extensions Inkstitch. Oh, params. Almost said lettering. Go into satin column, custom satin column. It did start on the right. And we want neither. It looks like it's going to end on the left, which is fine because we need a running stitch anyway. Apply and quit. I'm going to go a running stitch from that left-hand side over. And yeah, to somewhere there. We can adjust as needed. So I'm going to turn that into a running stitch, extensions Inkstitch params. And allow lock stitches. Nope. Neither. Hit apply and quit. And same thing. I'm going to run that out to about here. And I could also grab this column, duplicate it, and drop it down. Either way is good. Grab both of those. Control K, extensions Inkstitch params. Custom satin column. I kind of want it to start on top. I need to do neither. Start on top, which it did. That's where my running stitch is running to. More importantly, I need it to end on top. So it's not ending on top, but I'm going to go ahead and apply and quit. I'm going to go into my nodes tool. I'm going to select that running stitch, drop it down here so that I can adjust it so that now it's going to start. The running stitch is going to go to where it starts on the bottom. Now it's going to finish on top. That's what we need. I'm going to select that column, go into extensions, Inkstitch, satin tools, flip satin column rails. I need this to end on top instead of on bottom. Let's see if that's what we have now. It should be. So my running stitch goes to the bottom, it starts on the bottom, and it ends on the top. Absolutely what we needed. Hit apply and quit. The reason we needed that is because now I don't have to use a running stitch to go from here down. So this column ends right here. I'm going to pick up right here so that This column will start on the right hand side. We're going to come down to here. And same thing over here. I don't know if I've overlapped enough, but perhaps should be. And we're going to come down to here. We're going to select these two. Hit combine. Control K for combine. Params. We want it to start on the right hand side. Satin column, custom satin column, neither. It does start on the right hand side. Problem is it stops on the left hand side. We need it to stop on the right hand side. So what we're going to do is when this column ends to here and we start stitching over on this side, your embroidery machine should just realize that it's just a jump, just like the satin column is. So we are going to flip this one, extensions, Inkstitch, tools, satin, flip column, satin columns. And now it should stop on the right hand side because that's what we need. Starts on the left, not ideal, but should be fine. And needs to stop on the right, which it does. And we're going to apply and quit. Now, this next one is just a simple draw it out. Just like I did before, it stops down here on the bottom right of this column. So if I start my column up here on the top, it'll stitch the bottom first. Grab both of those, Control K, extensions, Inkstitch, Rams, custom satin column. It does start on the bottom. We're going to do this and select after because this is the end of the letter E. And it does start at the bottom and finishes out. Perfect. Hit apply and quit. I'm going to go ahead and throw this E into its own group. Now, the M is just pretty much the same thing, except with the M, we don't have to have any running stitches. So we're going to start down here. We're going to go straight up. And I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to do this as if nobody was watching, so some of this is going to be pretty quick. Control K, extensions, Inkstitch, params, satin column, custom satin column. Before I need it to end on the right hand side. The M's not as important. It does end on the left hand side, so I am going to go ahead and switch it to show you switching it, which I've already showed you, but there it is. Now it's going to end over here on the right. We're going to go ahead and start our next one. We're going to come inside of here. We're going to go to about here, come on down. We're going to start here, go to here, go a little bit further over than center. We're going to go to there, grab my pencil tool, make couple of 3 straight lines across. I'm going to grab, that's the first one, okay? Grab all of these, Control K, extensions, Inkstitch, params, satin column, custom satin column, neither. Starts on the right, that's fine. The other one started on the right, or ended on the right, that's fine. This one ends on the left. We're close enough together that it shouldn't matter. Now, what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to flip it, drag it over, path, reverse. So now it should go from bottom up and do params. We should be on none, neither. Bottom up, and that's good. And apply and quit. I'm going to grab this first column, duplicate, drag it straight over. Extension, we did that one going up, so this one needs to be going down, and path reverse. But extensions, Inkstitch, params. This one needs to be after. Hit apply and quit. We've already done the M. We are done. Group X. So you should basically understand what I mean by digitizing correctly for small satin stitches. And sometimes when I'm not making the small satin stitches, you'll catch me either doing or not doing some of these certain things, and some of it's out of habit. Now that I understand lock stitches, I don't like lock stitches because if you have lock stitches close together, you lock and trim stitches close together to each other, you're inviting more problems out of your embroidery machine. So let's get rid of this text right here. Delete. And we're going to go ahead and preview. We're going to go ahead and visualize. You can see what's going on. And you'll see exactly how I made it. Nothing's tying off. I'm not trimming either. So the fact that you tie off means you can trim. You're not going to add any more needle points to a trim if you've already tied off. So let's look at the needle points. Everything is very clean. I've got a tie off needle point here, and then not again until we get to here. Outstanding. Outstanding. So that all looks good. Let's see what the realistic looks like. There's your realistic. Very simple font. But since it's so small, it really has to be simple for it to work. So let's move on to part 2. I don't need this anymore. Part 2 is a little bit of show and tell. Oh my goodness. I'm huge. Part 2 is a little bit of show and tell. And Heather did not want to be on camera, so I'm interpreting her words best I can. This part I don't do. When I'm doing test stitching, I throw in a couple of layers of cutaway into the hoop, no fabric, and that's my test. So if it looks good in the cutaway, in the 2 layers of cutaway, then it should look good on the fabric if the fabric doesn't move. That's the key. And it depends on what kind of fabric you're on. If you're on, say, cotton duck cloth, some kind of cotton canvas, that is extremely stiff anyway, so it's not going to move. You don't need much stabilizer. But if you're on a t-shirt that stretches and is see-through and is made to wick and breathe, or you're on those sporty shirts that are designed to wick and breathe, those things are nasty, stretchy. That is not good for embroidery. So you need to make sure that everything is as stable as you can get it. So this is, hold on, Poly Mesh Pro, I think is what she told me. And it's rather thin. It's kind of somewhat soft, so it doesn't feel bad if you have it up against the skin, and it's extremely strong. It does not move very easily at all. And what she'll do is she'll take 2 of these and a can of spray adhesive. We'll talk about that a little bit. She'll take 1 of these, she'll spray it, she lets it sit for 15-20 seconds to dry it a little bit, and then she'll take another one and she'll put it at an angle like that, so that all of these, so that there's mesh going in, mesh goes this way and this way. If you put a little diagonal to it, then you have mesh going 4 different ways. It's not going anywhere. Then she'll spray it again. She lets it sit for 15-20 seconds. And then she applies it to the fabric, the shirt, or what have you. And this is the spray adhesive that she uses. We're not endorsing this by any means. We have no affiliation. It's just the one that she uses. If she finds a better one next week, she'll switch to it. And that's what you should do. You should use whatever works for you. And I asked her because I've seen a few people say in forums and discussion boards that spray adhesive gums up the needles. She has never had spray adhesive gum up the needles. Make sure it dries. Let it sit long enough to dry and be held together. That way that fabric doesn't move, because again, you don't want that fabric to move. If you're making very tiny columns, satin columns, then the slightest little bit of movement is going to have a great deal of effect. So that is kind of it. Digitizing. Digitize it correctly. You want as few stitchings as possible in that digitizing. You want as few tie-offs and trims as you can. Sometimes I don't even add trims to the machine. I let it tie off from one letter, just jump to the next letter, tie off and begin that letter. And then we trim it with a scissors afterwards. Because the less trimming your machine does on a tiny little scale like that, the less likely anything is to foul up. And part 2 is the stabilizer. You have to make sure that thing doesn't move. And that's pretty much it. So I did say I was going to try to look for some small examples, small satin stitch lettering examples. The equipment rental here, those satin columns in that lettering is only I think it was 0.58 millimeters, if I remember right. And these EASE part of lease, those satin columns were only 0.4, very small. This is one of my test subjects that's only on 2 layers of cutaway. When she did the actual, I think she did them on polo shirts. When she did the actual polo shirt, she did the sandwich of stabilizer that I explained earlier. And they turned out fabulous. I'll see if I can find that. Okay, so this is another example of the very small lettering. This Admiral Propane, those satin columns were about 0.75 millimeters wide. And a hat's a little different because this, I think I did this on a structured hat, which basically has its own stabilizer built in, but you can see that it turned out pretty good. And I think I'll leave it on this one. This will be the last example that I show. The cafe letters for this Fats Cafe stitching, and you can tell this is actually on the shirt. The cafe portion here was 0.7 millimeters. So we've done quite a bit of very small columns. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If it's a question I don't know on the machine side, I will ask Heather and I will give you her answer. But anyway, that's it for this video. Until next time, and as always, thanks for watching.